But right now, we're going camping. Just under 6 weeks away, tick, 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 from opening night of the NFL season. So we're going to go city to city and break down the biggest storylines as we gear up for the new year. First, let's take a trip to the Bay. The 49ers coming off a frankly surprising 12-5 season, given that Brock Purdy only played 9 games. Shout out to Mac Jones. Look at their notable offseason additions, obviously headlined by Mike Evans joining the fold. Finally worked out that new deal with Trent Williams. But I looked at the roster. Everyone talks about Seattle, the champs. Everyone talks about the Rams, obviously. So the Niners are third, but their roster is littered with names that we know. My storyline is, does the old core have one last ride? Shanahan will have them be competitive. Purdy is good. Love the Mike Evans addition. But they, more than any team in the NFL, are going to hit their ceiling, are going to rely on star players who are old staying healthy. And that's just generally speaking a bad recipe or formula. If we put up the names that I'm talking about, it is fairly overwhelming. Like Trent Williams is maybe the best left tackle of my lifetime watching football. Sure. George Kittle is obviously spectacular. Mike Evans, Christian McCaffrey, who was healthy but historically hasn't been, and Fred Warner, all on the wrong side of 30. 3 of those 5 players missed 6 or more games last year. Can you back a team, Coach, that has this many of their best players that injury prone and that old?
Yeah, so they're the second oldest roster in the NFL next to Washington, and ability-wise, that they could make a run, no question about it. Durability-wise, I don't think it's going to happen, and there's been a problem in San Francisco for quite a while in terms of durability. And if we pull this up, last year they had the 3rd most misses by starters. Okay, so and look at ahead of Washington. So there's the older team, but more importantly, they've ranked in the top 3 in each of the last 4 seasons. That to me,
top 10.
Top 10 in 3 of the last 4. So it's not a one-off. It's been pretty consistent, and the older you get, the more and more likely it is to continue along that path.
Yeah, like even with the addition of Mike Evans is considered an old receiver, right?
I mean, he was on the graphic, and he was hurt.
And so when you talk about what they need to do from an offensive standpoint, is obviously the ball continues to go through CMC, but they're going to have to find out ways how to pepper it around outside of CMC and Mike Evans. Now, who's going to step up? Obviously, hopefully George Kittle will be back, coming off the Achilles. But I think one of the biggest additions that they were able to kind of make hay with and bring back was Trent Williams. Trent Williams is a monster. He's so beneficial to that run game and his ability to lead in that locker room. So I think everything we just said, like it comes down to the health, not talent. We know they got the talent, but I think they still have more. They still got some time to make a run.
It's a stars aligning type of thing, right? Like there's a version of this season where the Niners are the Super Bowl champions. Like I do think you have to put in that bucket of teams that can do it.
Yeah.
But
there's a version where they missed the playoffs.
Absolutely.
Easily missed the playoffs.
Right. Just the wrong couple of guys get hurt, and it's not. Listen, you could say that about any team in the NFL. That's not revolutionary analysis. But when you are relying on this number of players who are injury prone at that age, it feels more likely with them than
But
others.
they've been here before. That's why keeping Mac Jones was huge in the offseason too. Like paying him, keeping him steady.
Yeah, they can hold the fort if Brock Purdy misses 4 weeks. They've proven that. But the question is, like, all of those guys, are they going to be productive for an entire season?
And even with the volume of injuries they had last year, they overachieved. When you think of the amount of star power that missed games over and over again. And the fact
Kyle Shanahan, right? I mean, Kyle Shanahan teams have a very high floor.
Yeah.
Right? If he is your coach, you are going to be in a lot of games and going to be competitive.
And if the group stays healthy, that even higher ceiling.
Right, it gives them the high ceiling. All right, let's stay in the division and go to Seattle, where the defending champs, cool 14-3 last season, had a breakout year from Sam Darnold. The notable additions and just moves, really. Fortunate to keep Rashid Shaheed. Obviously gave JSN the money. Lost Kenneth Walker. Drafted Price out of Notre Dame. Lost Kobe Bryant, the safety to the Bears. Lost Kubiak, to be the head coach of the Raiders. And that's my top storyline for them. How big of a loss is Clint Kubiak? We won't know. We can assume it matters, but it's a really remarkable amount of continuity for a Super Bowl champion. Losing a running back, a safety, and one coordinator. It's not that much to lose. But just one second. You're all good. Like when I put up what their offense jumped to from last year to the year before, 2024 to 2025, because Kubiak was just there for 2025, you could look at that and say, Kubiak made all the difference, or you could say, Sam Darnold made all the difference. Like, I genuinely don't know how much of a backslide I'm expecting the Seattle offense to have until we see it. But to me, that is, if Kubiak didn't matter that much, like, or if he matters more to the Raiders as an addition than a loss to Seattle, then they're going to be fine. Or it could be a huge loss.
Yeah, I think it goes back to what Coach said earlier in the week. When you're a new OC stepping into a new role, you got to adjust to the players in the scheme that's already before you, instead of you trying to just dump what you do best or what you know on a group of guys. If you're Brian Fleury, the new OC for the Seahawks, there's already a system in place on how these guys operate and what got you to win a Super Bowl. Don't come in there and try to reinvent the wheel. Hopefully you can do that. Like I remember my time as a Steeler, when I had Bruce Arians, BA ran it a certain type of way. He knew what our bread and butters were. And then when we had Todd Haley said, okay, if that's what y'all do, this is what we do, right? And he kind of just went along, and he obviously added some things and adjusted some things along the way.
And yelled at people.
He did. But I'm telling you, from a system standpoint, it didn't. We weren't challenged where we had to rethink things or kind of question things. Philosophy-wise, we were all brought in because he adjusted on the fly.
And Kubiak had been a coordinator before, so he'd been a coordinator in New Orleans, and then they had another stop prior to that, and in between he was a passing game coordinator, and it was a heavy emphasis. And when you lose an offensive coordinator or defensive coordinator, it can be a big deal. Yep. And when you bring in a guy that doesn't have any experience calling plays, he's going to have a learning curve, and that's just the way it is. And you have to work through that. Look at Detroit last year. They tried to transition offensive coordinators. It didn't go the way they wanted to. They had to make the change during the season. How disruptive that was to their whole offense. So as much as I believe they're going to stay with the Kubiak system, it's still how the guy calls plays, getting used to the players that he has, them respecting him. Remember, they won a Super Bowl.
Right.
And he wasn't part of that mix. So
how big of a loss? Like, they were the third scoring offense. They won the Super Bowl. Like, do you think their offense is going to take a huge step back? Because they bring back basically everybody except the running back.
Well, what I'm saying here, Danny, is you don't know how big of a loss is because you don't know how quickly the new coordinator is going to transition and how comfortable. What is he going to be as a play caller? That's a big unknown.
Sure.
And then it's also the players responding to him, and what kind of benefit of the doubt will they give him if it's not going well? We've seen it in Philadelphia where they transition offensive coordinators. Doesn't go really well. So it's an unknown.
Yeah.
I like the idea they're keeping the system, but it's unknown.
And think about it quickly, I know we got to
go.
transition, but think about how the Seahawks ate last year off. It was their ability to run the ball between the 20s is how they were effective, right? Like that may change if Fleury feels differently. So we'll see.
All right, let's go in the RV here, stay again in the NFC West, and go down to Hollywood, where the Rams had a 12-5 season. Of course, lost in the NFC Championship game to the aforementioned Seahawks in that classic, in the NFC title game. If you look at the Rams offseason, I mean, they were busy. Basically a whole new secondary. They added Myles Garrett, and then they used their first-round pick on a player who they hope will not play. But again, they added Myles Garrett. They still could have Aaron Donald still to come. So my biggest storyline for the Rams is, do they have enough depth behind the stars? They deserve to be the favorite. I get it. It is a spectacular preseason roster. It is also very top-heavy. Because Devontae Adams is in his mid-30s. Matt Stafford's in his late 30s. We'll see who they end up paying among like Byron Young and Puka Nacua and like which guys they ultimately have to keep versus pay and all that. That's a story for the future. But normally, you have depth with draft picks, with young, cheap talent. Les Snead, famously, F them picks. I've never seen anything like this. Coach, you've been around the league for forever. Look at this. Last 10 years, that's their first-round picks. 8 of the 10 years, nothing. Jared Verse, they traded him away. Ty Simpson, they hope he doesn't play. So there's not a first-round pick that they used on the roster who can be reinforcements for the guys at the top. It's an incredible roster, but it's also top-heavy and older. I don't know if there's enough depth there if they have the wrong injury or two.
But what they've done is they've shown that they can make that formula work. And
No question.
And when they haven't had the first-round draft picks, they have done a good job in the later rounds farming guys and finding guys, which a lot of teams don't do very well. So they've taken a radically different approach than most teams in terms of trading for established talent, giving away young guys and cheap guys, and they found a way to make it work. So to your point, if there's a team that's going to continue to be able to make this work, it's them because they know how to do it.
Yeah, it's a legit concern for me because this is why Rams fans were throwing their remote when they drafted Ty Simpson, because they realized later in the season, you know who was one of the key factors that was out? Devontae Adams, who happens to be 36 years old, when they could have drafted Mekhi Lemon at that position and say, all right, if Devontae happens to get hurt again, at least we got the young fella in the wings that can fill that void. So, yeah, it's a cause for concern. At the end of the day, as long as you got that man healthy, Matthew Stafford, you got a shot, baby.
Right, and I don't love the analysis of like, well, if they get hurt, they're in trouble, and if they're healthy, they're going to be great. Because you can say that with a huge percentage of NFL teams. But for a 38-year-old quarterback in Matt Stafford, it probably is an even bigger piece of it. And I will say, I was very critical of the Ty Simpson pick when it happened, thinking the exact same thing that you did, reinforce it with a player who can help get Stafford another one. Once they were able to go out and get Myles Garrett, I actually thought it made more sense. Because they're like, we can acquire Myles Garrett to be like our all-in piece for this team. And so we don't think we're going to be drafting in the top 15 for a while. So we will draft our – now, you could debate whether or not Ty Simpson's an elite quarterback talent, but clearly McVay liked him, Wes Snead liked him. We're going to get our heir apparent to Stafford. We don't plan to be drafting this high. So that was the ultimate move for the future.
And they're also in a great position because there is no pressure, and there will be no pressure from the fan base to play him, which is radically different than any other first-round draft pick for a quarterback. Then no one's going to be saying, put him in ahead of Stafford. And if Stafford does get hurt later in the season, which there's a chance that could happen, obviously, at least he's had a bunch of time to learn and grow, like we say other first-round draft picks should have, and he's got a great mentor to guide him while he's there.
Well, I'll say this, Ty Simpson better show something in the preseason, because if he stinks, it's going to be trouble.
It was one of the more scrutinized first-round picks we've seen in a while. Final stop today as First Things First goes camping. We go all the way back east here to New England, where the Patriots also went 14-3 last season, of course, got blown out in the Super Bowl. Ultimately, we had to blow up the door of destiny. I did give Wilds the door handle, though. I don't know if he cherished that as a present. Their moves this offseason, you might have heard about it. They added A.J. Brown, signed Romeo Doubs. Stephon Diggs is gone. Elijah Vera Tucker given a little bit of reinforcement for their offensive line to protect Drake Maye. Still some serious questions on the left side. Hoping for Will Campbell to be healthy this year. My biggest camp storyline for the Patriots was more quarterback-centered of how does Drake Maye follow it up? I know you've talked a lot, Coach, about how he's a young player. He's a part of this historic quarterback class. He's in the Super Bowl in year 2. He's the runner-up for MVP in year 2. I think Drake Maye is awesome. And I thought the most impressive thing that he did last year was he clearly elevated talent around him. Like, Stephon Diggs is good, but he's not a top 5 receiver in football at this stage. Booty, the same thing. He had huge problems on the left side of his offensive line. And so if you go from what they had in weapons last year to weapons this year, and there's more continuity and it's his 3rd year in the league, I just looked at what Drake Maye was able to do last year, just to remind people. That's where he was targeting Stephon Diggs. Absolutely spectacular.
Right.
So if you replace those targets with a guy who's better than Stephon Diggs, why would, if we just throw up his numbers from last year to remind people about what it looked like for the runner-up MVP in year 2, why can't those numbers stay the same or get even better if he now has Doubs and A.J. Brown instead of Stephon Diggs?
Because he's going to demand more attention. I think
Drake Maye will?
Drake Maye, yeah. I think the defense right now will not only focus on him, we'll evaluate what he can't do well, and they're going to exploit it. I think the competition will be harder. You know it's going to be a different schedule. I think they're going to play better teams.
Schedule's tough.
And I think right now, his biggest thing is he has to prove that his play is the standard, the new standard, and that's something that just he popped off the tape because of a lesser schedule, and he's come together. I just think right now Drake may go through a little regression, but it's okay. I think he's no longer a secret. I think people respect he's a new age quarterback.
This is the Caleb Williams discussion, where now he's in year 2 of this system, Where last year, both those guys were just learning the terminology, how the plays worked, the huddle, all the things that go into learning a new offense. And this offseason, in this training camp, he has a chance to really build on those things. So you should see significant progress. And I think Josh McDaniels does a great job of nuancing offensive plays. But Josh worked on defense for 2 years. He was with me in the secondary. So he really understands defense, and he teaches that to the quarterbacks. So that, to me, is a significant edge. To your point, though, Willie, the level of competition is going to be much greater.
Yep.
The amount of figuring out what beats him, the time spent on that by defense coordinators is so much more significant. So they're going to force him to do what he does poorly a lot, and we're going to see whether or not he can overcome that.
Aren't they clearly a better team on paper, though? I think what you're saying obviously makes sense. It's a tougher schedule. They're not going to take anybody by surprise. Like that is objectively true. But they've added talent. Like there are more additions than subtractions, and the additions are
A.J. Brown.
And that's a top 10 receiver.
Yeah,
and Romeo Doubs, who is a quarterback's best friend in the red zone. Like that is. Those are real X's and O's on the field reasons that you should be better, as opposed to like teams aren't going to overlook you.
But they had really good chemistry, or it seemed like they had really good chemistry as a team.
They did.
And the question is, when you bring in new guys, and you bring in talented guys, and you bring guys with big expectations, how does that chemistry work?